Hello, beautifuls, and welcome to another awesome panelist that we have for our Astrology of 2022 panel. So excited to bring you someone I've been following for a little while now on Instagram. This is Amber from Cosmic Playground, and Amber, is a great astrologer that really gets to, really embodied to the way that Amber explains astrology. You really feel it. And I mean, she is a Pisces sun, so there is that beautiful water essence to the way she explains it, so that we really feel it on a watery cellular level. Like, that's how I interpret your astrology, Amber. I really love reading your words and your embodiment of what you share around astrology. So it's my absolute pleasure to have Amber on. And as always, I ask the same question to all my panelists. So where does astrology land for you? How were you initiated into it? And what does it mean to you in your life? We want to hear all about that sort of wake up into astrology journey.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to discuss the Jupiter and Aries transit. But before we get into that, I guess my story with astrology began when I birthed my child. I feel like that was such a big moment in my life that happened around my Saturn return, of course. And I birthed another version of me. And that version of me is unfolding in front of you all now. So hello, that's me. And I guess in that journey of finding myself, I just returned back to the things that I used to love when I was younger and I fell away from. You know, I grew up staring at the stars. We had a holiday house down near the beach and we had a telescope, and I used to just remember that as a memory. In my childhood with my dad, we would always gaze up at the sky. I had an awareness. He's not spiritual, but how I was raised is he told me that I am from the stars, essentially.
Bless.
So, I know, bless, right? Yes. So yeah, it just came back. It just came back to me and sort of landed for me when I transitioned from maiden to mother. And it just really helped me put the pieces together, I suppose you could say, as you can imagine, of finding myself. And then, as you know, it's a rabbit hole. And once you enter it, you just are different. So that's my journey into astrology, and I just haven't looked back. So I'm so blessed.
Love that. Yeah, I really love that. And one of our other panelists, Babula, she had her initiation at her Saturn return as well, which was amazing. And I love hearing everyone's different journeys of how astrology landed for them. But also Babula is a Pisces sun like you, and she said when she was a child she would lay on the ground and look at the stars and go, or look at the sky and go, what's beyond the blue? And I was like, such a Pisces. And then you've just done the same thing. So I'm loving these sun signs that are coming on, and these beautiful, and everyone can start to see and hear that there are these beautiful nuances to these stories and these revelations and these initiations into astrology. Like, it's incredible. So I'm glad that you continued down that rabbit hole. And like you said, yeah, you never look back. Like, it's a rabbit hole you stay in once you're an astrologer. There's no other way to live, really, is there? Absolutely.
I don't even remember what it is. It's like, how did I survive not looking at the chart every day?
Yeah.
Don't you know what I mean? Like, for me, the first thing I do when I wake up is like, I just remind myself of what's happening, and it's just part of my day.
Yeah, it is. It becomes, it just becomes a part of the way you weave every moment. And I mean, of course, there's all the great, cool pop astrology memes all over socials and stuff, but some of them are fun. Like, once you constantly, astrology is the answer to every question you could ever ask me. Like, anytime there's a conversation, astrology just comes back in, no matter what it is. And it always just makes sense. And you just, how do you live without it? Like,
yeah, completely.
Yeah. I feel you on that one, babe. So great to have you in this astrology portal with us all. And as Amber said earlier, she is going to be really unpacking the Jupiter and Aries transit of 2022. We have another panelist unpacking Jupiter and Pisces. And then, of course, there's been some woven panelists that have shared some other things around Jupiter. So Jupiter's a great, he's our biggest planet in the solar system. So he's that big that he contains all other planets. So that's how big he is. So he's friggin' rad as. We love him. He's the Santa Claus of the zodiac, and we love that about him. And yeah, his ingress into Aries, I'm super excited about. So I'm really looking forward to Amber teaching us and taking us on a little journey of what to expect with Jupiter in Aries. So take it away, beautiful heart.
I like it how you said he's the Santa Claus. What did you say? He's the Santa Claus of the
zodiac.
Of the zodiac. I love that you said that because, the lead up to Christmas time is, of course, we're in Sagittarius season, and Sagittarius is Jupiter. So it is. And if we think about that time before Christmas, what's it about? Gift giving, abundance, excess. Usually we would go and travel all around and see various people. It's a time where we celebrate and have fun, and it's like we forget about work, we're on holidays. That's the essence of what Jupiter is. So it's that we always think about Jupiter as a planet of expansion. So we hear that word expansion when we think about Jupiter. And when I think about expansion in relation to Jupiter, we have to remember that Jupiter actually doesn't create. It's not a creative energy. It only expands what is already there. So when we're dealing with this concept of what is already there, and we're looking at Jupiter in our natal charts, you already have something in you that is a gift or something that you're just naturally talented at or naturally good at, something that you would excel with. And what Jupiter is the energy that you can really push the limits of that. So it's not created, it's actually lies in you, but Jupiter just blows it up. So it's this energy of real force and momentum and potential. And of course, we can't think about extremes without looking at the polarity of that as well. So where Jupiter can get really, really big and inflated and expansive, it can also go overboard and be too much. And so we're sort of dancing with this energy of like, okay, let's grow really big, but then also, I don't really know where my limits are. And that's why, we have the idea of Saturn coming in, because Saturn is the reminder of our limits. And, in Greek mythology, Saturn, known as Kronos, is the father of Jupiter, which is Zeus. Zeus is the king of the gods. And so Saturn always wants to control Jupiter, because Saturn never wants Jupiter to get out of hand and overthrow Saturn, does he? So it's this idea of like knowing your limits to an extent, pushing them for growth opportunity, but recognizing when you need to sort of slow your roll a little bit. And that's how I like to think of Jupiter. So it's really handy to know your Jupiter sign to see where you naturally excel, but also where you can unconsciously go to excess. So that's how I like to think of Jupiter. Now in Aries, this is, I was really thinking about what it really means to have Jupiter in Aries. And there are so many ways that we can look at it, but the way that I like to understand an archetype is to look at the primary, it's like the primary essence of what it is. And from my perspective, Aries is the I am. So with Aries, we start the new zodiac cycle. So it's the first sign of the 12. So in essence, we're starting the wheel again and we're in a new cycle. And when we begin a new cycle, obviously we've closed off a chapter, which is Pisces. So we're closing off a chapter and we're beginning a new. So when we begin something new, it's the feeling of a baby being birthed into the world. It's that initial declaration of here I am. So in essence, what is I am? You know, when we think about I am, it is a statement that is a reflection that you are a reflection of God, creator, life force. So it's the idea that we are a creator. You know, when we think about this declaration, I am, it's that we have this pure, creative life force energy that lives within each of us. And before it's even tainted with the conditioning, which comes, you know, down the track of the rest of the zodiac archetypes, what does it mean to just stand with I am, you know? So I sort of think about, it's a time of remembering, because where we come from, which depends on your cosmology, but what I speak to and what I share with my clients and my people that follow me on social media is that we come from source energy, and this idea of pure divine consciousness, and whatever you want to call it, it's God, it's the universe, it's the cosmos, it's love, it's unconditional love, whatever you want to call it, it's that eternal spirit that lies in us. And the remembrance of that is in the I am statement, because it is perfect in its own being. And so starting this new cycle with Jupiter in Aries is really the expansion of you, like entertain the idea that you are a creator and not a follower. And that is really important to remember when looking at Aries, because Aries doesn't follow, it leads. And yes, we have people born in Aries season, and we have people who have strong Aries archetypes in their natal chart. So this energy might flow very, let's say, strong or natural to them, but we are all 12 zodiac signs. So we all have the I am Aries creator energy in us. And so I really think about, because Jupiter already expands what is there, could this be a potential moment where this is tapping into the energy of what has been lying dormant within you?
Love that.
An energy of creation, and that you are the creator of your life. So what is just sitting under the surface, ready to be announced to the world?
The expansion of the self.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that self-awareness as a concept will be a huge thing for this transit. And again, when we're exploring the realms of astrology, we're looking at polarity. So yes, it's going to take you to the highest highs, but it's also going to take you to the lowest lows, because sometimes becoming self-aware, it's not always going to be all the sunshine rainbow moments. It's going to be the shadow aspects of yourself that are revealed to you. That is important, because how can we be self-aware if we're not seeing the whole picture? You know, we can't just focus on the positive aspects of things. We have to look at the whole human being. So this idea of self-awareness coming alive, I think that in some people it's really going to be ignited in a really strong way. For some people, they're going to run with it. And for some people, it might be really confronting. You know, it might be like a moment where it's like, oh my God, I don't want to see that about myself. I don't want to lead. I don't want to be a leader. I don't want to, you know, it can bring up a lot of the conditioning and the fear that is essentially what blocks you from stepping into that leadership Aries I am. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. It's sort of like, there's also that real element of ego and having to really play with the ego with Jupiter and Aries. Aries being the first, and Jupiter naturally, happiest in Sagittarius and traditional ruling of Pisces. There's that energy as well of this exaggeration, the arrogance. So having to come face to face with that, it's definitely something that I've been teaching for 20 plus years is self-awareness is the first key to unlock your everything, so I think you're so bang on when you've said that, look, self-awareness is going to be a very strong theme with Jupiter and Aries. I really love that take, Amber. Really good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when this whole like spiritual path of, we talk about shadow work and setting boundaries and cleansing energy and all that sort of stuff. Actually, the only thing you need to do is be self-aware, and it unlocks everything.
Hallelujah.
That's all it is. It's like, what is spirituality? It is literally just the awareness of the self.
Exactly.
And when you're aware of the self, it's like you awaken the God within you. That's the idea of self-awareness, because you're actually returning home to that part in you that is from, I always think of this relationship between when you have a connection to source divine consciousness, it's not that it's separate from you. And a lot of this polarity that we see in the world is the fear that I'm not good enough to embody that. I'm scared of being seen as God, when in essence that's what we are. And it's like the war that we see in the world is really the internal war between, it's like our humanness and our spirit not wanting to merge, really. So the self-awareness that comes about is seeing, okay, why can't I accept that part of myself? Why can't I forgive myself for those things? Why can't I just unconditionally love myself? What is stopping me from embodying this wholeness? What is stopping me from embodying this sovereignty, this leadership that lives within every human being? We wouldn't have these aspects in us if we weren't capable of holding this energy. It's just, I think there will be a big sort of like aha awakening moment for so many people in a really beautiful way.
It's really interesting that it's so Piscean of Amber to be really talking about the unity and connection. I'm loving it. But I also have just shared this cool thing on my Instagram that says, Earth is where you are born to forget you were God, to see if you can remember how to become God again. And really just listening to you then, I just wrote, you are God. That is Jupiter and Aries. Remembering that Jupiter is Zeus and he is a very strong God, and Aries is me. So that Jupiter archetype is the guru. It is the God. It's the quest. Like that's the Sagittarius part of, Jupiter rules Sagittarius, but Jupiter himself, like Zeus is a huge player of the mythology of this. And Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. So you are God, I am God. And I think that you're so right with, really, it's so great to listen to all of my panelists because there's no expectations and wherever they go is just magic. And I'm loving the magic of this because it's not just, going Jupiter in Aries is this, it's actually exploring this really, like like I said, when I listen to you, I feel things. Like that's what's really great about the way you describe. I feel that sense of, like I am the God, and Jupiter in Aries. And we want to work with that humbly too, like we want to face off with the ego around that, but then use that to be humbly knowing that we are God, we are infinite, we are everything, and that nothing is outside of ourselves. And I think that Jupiter in Aries, the way you've really melded that is very bang on. Love it, Amber.
I'm glad that resonates. Like when we're thinking about, you just said this, I am God. Yes, you are God. You're an emanation of God, just like And this isn't new information. This is echoed through all esoteric text. This is throughout the whole Bible. The Father and the Son they're not separate, because the Son is the emanation of the Father, and that's what we are. We're an emanation of the Father, which is the Spirit, which is God. So, I always like to think about how the tarot fits in a little bit as well. And Aries is the Emperor.
Mm-hmm.
And the Emperor is taking up space. It's like the Emperor energy is, I am here, I'm taking up space. So, and yeah, you have a right to take up space. Every single human's birthright is to take up space and own that space. That's that Aries energy. And I think that, like you said, it's that self-awareness that comes into play when we're thinking about the expansion, and obviously the ego blowing that out to proportion, taking up space. So that's when we can see the more toxic aspect of taking up space. So, that's also a potential as well when we're thinking about how this energy can manifest. So should I go over the dates of this transit?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a little bit of how everyone can use this, what's unfolding, the degrees he gets to before his retrograde, before we wrap it up, so everyone's got that embodiment of where they can look at in their chart and everything. And because that description that you've given is it's also going to be very different. Like even in my 2022 kit, I've written about Jupiter and Aries, and again, very different perspective of Amber's all-seeing cosmic united Piscean wisdom, which is why I'm doing this. I mean, I think I say this on every episode, because having every astrologer come on with the lens of their own blueprint is how they interpret astrology, and that's what makes every astrologer so friggin' darn amazing, because we're all the lens of our own astrology chart. Like that's how we interpret and perceive things. So loving this take, because it feels really, again, whole, it feels really embodied, and it really does call on us to move into this state of self-awareness, which I think is a really powerful game changer for people if people are still unaware, because there's a lot of spiritual people that have zero self-awareness. They think that because they're spiritual and wear some crystals and know their sun, moon, rising, that they are self-aware. It's like, sorry, motherfucker, doesn't mean anything unless you're actually self-aware and you know that you can call yourself out on all of the shit. Like there is nowhere to hide when you are a self-aware human. Like you have to be fucking courageous. Hello, Aries. Like that is Aries. You've got to be a courageous warrior in the pursuit of your own expansion, growth, and godliness to fucking get there. And that is so much of what you're saying with Jupiter and Aries. So like banging.
That's a great summation. I loved that you just chef's kiss.
The cherry on top.
Cherry on top.
Love it.
So Jupiter will enter Aries, depending on where you are in the world, May 10 for Eastern Standard Eastern Time. May 11 will be on our side of the world.
Yep.
So from May 10-ish till the 28th of July, we'll have its time in Aries. So it is going to, like you said, make its way up to 8 degrees of Aries. So from 0 to 8 degrees, you can have a look in your natal chart as to what is hanging around 0 to 8 degrees of cardinal signs. Cardinal signs being Aries, Libra, Capricorn, Cancer. And if you have any planets, they're going to be aspected by this transit. And up until 8 degrees, it's then going to station retrograde, and it's going to move its way back into Pisces. So it's going to dip its toes back in the water before it moves back into Aries again, which is December 20. December 20, right through to May 17, 2023, which is when it's going to go into Taurus. So really for 2022, we're just pretty much focusing on this period of May 10 to the 28th of July, which is that 8-degree. Interestingly, there's no huge aspects to outer planets during that little stint. So I really see that as, it's almost like, okay, this is like your time to shine. This is actually your time. It's the call forward, because are there going to be any major obstacles? Not in a huge way that previous astrology transits have given us, you know. It's not even going to be extremely, like, it will get close to Chiron eventually, but not during this period. Nothing really significant that's going to be really triggering for a lot of people. So I really see this as an opportunity for calling upon your sovereign self. And like we were saying, self-awareness. Yeah, there's self-awareness, which is like the identity, but there's actual whole being, soul perspective awareness. So dropping into that space during that time, which a lot of people will probably find that naturally, you know, as astrology transits just tend to happen naturally, it will just tend to fall that way. So do you want me to touch on a few things that I noticed with the last time Jupiter was in Aries?
Absolutely. It's always great because we know that astrology is all cycles. So as I've said before, astrology is not this like, oh, fancy, I'm so like cool. It's like, no, we just look at cycles and then we follow the cycles. And it's always great to go back that 12 years and just also just like a little extra bonus as well, like what Amber said around Jupiter isn't the creator, he just expands what's there. So if you do have Jupiter in Aries natally, which will see you being around 12, 24, 36 or whatever, Jupiter in Aries natally from 0 to 8 degrees, you will be having your Jupiter return. And again, there's this element of thinking, well, I'm going to win money, it's going to be all luck, but Jupiter's only going to give you exactly what you are. He is just going to expand what you're already being. So Jupiter is a benefic planet, absolutely. And that's why Jupiter transits, you know, like, oh, there's a Jupiter square, a Jupiter opposition. You're sort of like, we can deal with Jupiter squares and Jupiter oppositions, like, hello, like it gets a little bit gluttonous, or we fucking overcompensate, or we make mountains out of molehills, you know, we can do those things, but they're nothing in comparison to these Saturn Uranus squares that we're having. So the thing is that if you do have Jupiter in Aries between 0 and 8 degrees, you will be having your Jupiter return too. But I definitely want to hear about, you know, what you noticed from the last time this happened, because that will really help all of us to collectively on a macro level to look back 12 years ago, okay, well, what was happening for us? So yeah, share away, babe.
Well, I'll be having my Jupiter return. So started, I'm a 4 degrees, Jupiter Aries. Yep, going to be great for me in my sixth house.
Amazing.
I know. So what I noticed the last time Jupiter was in Aries is that remembering that Aries is an archetype, is warrior energy, and Aries being ruled by Mars, you know, and Mars is the planet that basically it's like it's not going to give up. It's very unforgiving and relentless in the way that it moves forward. So within all of us, there is a part within every person's spirit that won't give up on it's like that's a part of you that's going to fight for your life, and that's your Mars. And so that's what you want to call upon when you're really feeling like you're in it and you need to muster up that last little ounce. You call upon your Mars. And so that's what rules Aries. So it's giving that similar energy of drive and force and momentum and expansion in that direction. So the last time Jupiter was in Aries was in 2011. So 2010 and 2011. However, just one thing that I noticed during that time in 2011, so it was in Aries from January until June. And in May 2011, in the US, they had Obama elected at the time. He announced that Osama bin Laden had been killed. Yeah, that's when that happened, and that's huge. Because who is Osama bin Laden? He's known to be the mastermind behind September 11. Whatever your views are on that, that's just the information that's out there. And what is Aries and Mars? It's war. So it is the energy of fighting. And so that was a very obviously heated time. And that is that energy of Mars, you know, war. It's essentially like Mars is very eye for an eye, you know. It's sort of like this is you know, like you sow what you reap. This is an eye for an eye sort of energy. So collectively, I don't know what's going to happen, but it is a very tumultuous energy. It can be a very tumultuous energy. And again, like whatever's brewing away underneath the surface, it can come up for eruption. And literally, as well, during that time, a real common theme was that globally there were a lot of earthquakes, eruption, heat, Aries, ruled by Mars, hot, inflammation, things coming up. When Jupiter was in Aries in 2010 in Australia, we had Queensland had one of its most disastrous floods, and it was actually recorded as the most expensive natural disaster in our history. Expensive, keyword there, Jupiter, excess, very expensive to the economy. So could there be a lot of natural disaster things happening potentially? Just think of that, and it's like there's so much energy, it's got to go somewhere. So what could we potentially see manifest? Another interesting thing that happened while Jupiter was in Aries, when it moved into Aries in June 2010, the same month, on the 24th, we had Julia Gillard elected as our first female prime minister. So a new leader, leadership, that warrior energy, new.
Yeah.
So this is like really interesting and also exciting. And also, like, I can't wait to see what unfolds during this time. But there will be something that's going to happen for sure, because this is like Aries is the first cab out of the rank. It's like, what's going to happen? Like, what's going to be declared? Let's just wait and see. But it is very highly energizing.
Those things are what makes an astrologer, and to share with everyone, Amber, like those points around the earth and earthquakes and like eruption, like the heat, absolutely the heat, the natural disasters, the new leader. I mean, this is the shit that you can't make up. You know, I always say you can't make this shit up. Like, you can't make this shit up. Like, it's just always happening. Astrology is always happening, and on the earth materializing, you know, it's materializing, and that's what these transits from 12 years ago show us. So really amazing stuff 11, 12 years ago, to know that these are potential things, right? Like, we can look at the macro and go, well, this collective energy, like, what's going to actually come about? Because there will be something, because we are closing a cycle of Jupiter in Pisces. Jupiter is going to close out his 12-year cycle and enter that new, you know, give us a taste from May to July, like Amber said, and give us that little taste of what's to come in 2023, when he, you know, or at the end of 2022 and then into 2023. Because he's sort of working in these sort of nearly 6 month increments at the moment because of his degrees. So he spends 12 months in a sign, you know, 11 to 12 months, but he's doing it in these sort of 2 halves each month, really giving us each year, really giving us a view and an insight into what's to come. And within that first insight from May to July will be really interesting to see what unfolds there. And yeah, like incredible information on even just for us, even individually too, looking at we're closing a 12-year cycle, like, you know, Jupiter's going to finish up in Pisces in 2022, and that's the end. So what do you want to end as well, and what do you want to begin again? Like what's your new turn of the wheel? And you can see that by looking at your 0 degree point in Aries of your chart. So your 0 degree point in Aries is the begin again, the new turn of the wheel. So what house is that in? So, you know, you can start to see the themes that will come over that 12 months just by knowing the beginning point. You know, for some people it's 2 houses it will go over. For others, if you work with whole sign, it's just 1 house. No way's right or wrong, but like, you know, it really is a new beginning and a closing off of an old cycle, a 12-year cycle. So it's very exciting. And what you've shared today has really anchored in and embodied this new self-awareness and revelation that we get to expand in next year and ground and anchor in as the I am, which I think, and the I am God, you know, which is what I think I might call this one from after listening to everything you've said. I think that, yeah, Jupiter in Aries is the You Are God segment, I think.
Awesome. I love that.
Yeah, love it.
The more people that wake up to that knowing, because it's a truth, right? It is actually the truth of our existence here. And the more people that wake up to that knowing, the more the world is going to shift in the direction that we want it to go. It's the opposing forces that stop us from remembering that truth, which is why we're experiencing such chaos at the moment. It's because there's everything against us to forget our true nature. Whereas if you can rise above that and connect back into that divine part of yourself and really stand with that I am, that ownership of you being here as an emanation of God, then potentially that's how we're going to shape the world the way that we want to see it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Amen to that. And yeah, I know that's what I always teach my daughters as well. They ask, you know, do you believe in God? All these sorts of questions that come, of course, curiosity in children. And I say, you are God. I am God. You know, that's something that I've, you know, really ingrained within them, that there is a greater force and a higher force that we want to have faith in and connect to and trust. And, you know, I've got Jupiter in the 12th house, so it's very easy for me to just have pure trust and faith in the universe. That comes very easily for me. But the revelation, which is very, you know, even goes back through the Indian traditions and all those sorts of things, that I am God, like that God is not outside of myself. And it's actually quite magical to live your life like that, with the humility of that you are the creator of everything that happens to you in your life, and that you are God. And I love how you've really stamped that in this Jupiter Aries. Oh, Uranus is on my brain at the moment, crazy. Jupiter Aries transit next year, Amber. Like there's a real stamp of this, yeah, you are God. I like the awareness, the I am, the purity of that I wrote down, the leader of your life, you know, like said some great key words around that.
If you're the creator, then imagine and entertain the possibility that everything that you are looking around at right now, you created. Therefore, potentially, can that realization take you out of the victim mode in a way? Move you from being victim into a source of, I actually shape my reality and I'm capable of that.
Damn straight.
Yeah, making that shift. And we could even look at like Pisces energy into Aries, that dynamic, because Pisces can be a little bit victim mode. You know? So we want to be moving forward and we really want to embody this Aries.
Absolutely. It's been so divine listening to your and feeling your wisdom, Amber. It's been honestly a treasure. Thank you so much for coming on and stamping this Jupiter and Aries in a very different way that I think a lot of astrologers will interpret Jupiter and Aries, me included. So I'm really happy to get that beautiful take that you've given us to embody that self-awareness around the godliness and the expansion around that too. It's been really banging. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing this with everyone today.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.